I've been awake now for almost 60 hours, and I know I'm not going to last much longer. I'm so scared to sleep, or more accurately, I'm terrified of waking up once I go to sleep. I have insomnia, and occasionally I also experience this weird phenomenon called hypnopompic hallucinations. When I'm starting to wake up, like in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, I will see things that aren't really there. Mostly, I see spiders crawling on the walls. The first couple of times it seemed so real that I jumped out of bed and began hitting at the walls with a shoe. When I couldn't find the spiders, I would search for them, making sure they weren't in the bed or on the floor. It was terrifying. After a while, of course, I accepted the fact that they weren't real. It was just my brain tricking me as I awoke from a deep slumber. It still seemed as real as ever, and I still sometimes reacted by jumping to my feet in horror, but I also began to calm down quite a bit faster until I developed sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is a phenomenon during which you believe yourself to be fully awake. Something is happening that scares you, and you find that you can't move your body. You are completely out of control. Combine the sleep paralysis with the hypnopompic hallucinations, and you get next-level fear. I now see spiders crawling towards me, swinging above my head on strands of web, and I can't move. My husband has gotten used to calming me once I fully awaken and can move again. It usually involves waking him up, blubbering, tears, and up to an hour of cuddling and whispered assurances before we are both able to get back to sleep. Recently, though, things have gotten so much worse. I'll start with what happened about a week ago. My husband was out of town for work, and I fell asleep in the living room. My cat Cheshire was snoozing next to me on my pillow, and my dog Sirius was laying on the floor next to the sofa. I woke-ish and immediately saw what appeared to be a large wasp buzzing around my head. I couldn't move any part of my body or even shout, and the worst part was, I couldn't even close my eyes. As a buzzing sound began, I realized the wasp had been quiet before, and realized I was most likely hallucinating. The realization must have snapped my brain fully awake, and the wasp disappeared before my eyes. The buzzing, however, continued. Believing myself to be fully awake now, and finding my body responding to commands for movement, I began to sit up and blink the sleep from my eyes. Halfway to a sitting position, I froze again. There was a figure standing at the foot of the couch. It was nearly pitch black, except for the glow from a small nightlight on the other side of the room, so I couldn't make out features, but I knew that Caleb was out of town. The figure wasn't moving a muscle, and other than the unidentified buzzing sound, I heard nothing. No breathing, no rustling. He was as still as a statue. I decided I wasn't fully awake yet, and I needed to be proactive before these hallucinations got completely out of hand. So I spoke to it. Hello? My voice wasn't as strong and sure as if hoped, but I was proud of myself for facing my fears head on. The figure raised his head, and I knew that it was meeting my eyes. The buzzing sound cut off abruptly. My heart raced, and I felt the blood drain from my face. I blinked, and the figure's face was an inch from mine. Cheshire shrieked and ran off. I had no breath to scream. My eyes were locked in its dark gaze. Coal black eyes filled my vision, and I felt as if there were no good left in the world. A thick blanket of depression smothered my fear and left me wanting to die. I smelled his stale breath and felt his chest rise with it against my own. His knees were on the floor next to the couch, about where my dog had been, and I wondered in the back of my brain why he wasn't howling. He never blinked. It must have only lasted 10 or 15 seconds, but it was also a lifetime. I never blinked either. The paralysis was back with a vengeance. He spoke 3 words in a deep, gravelly voice. Time is short. I blinked then involuntarily, and he was gone. My dog was dead. He lay right where the dark visitor, as I started to think of him, had been. I cried inconsolably for hours before taking him to be cremated. I have been visited at each waking since that night by the same figure. It doesn't matter if it's night or morning. He speaks the same words of warning each time. They are a threat. I haven't told my husband as there's nothing he can do from out of town anyway. He won't believe it's real and will only suggest I go see a doctor. Currently, I'm at a hotel. I know it won't stop my visitor from appearing, but it's worth a try, and at least my cat will be safe. I want to ask it questions. What does it mean that time is short? Is it talking about my time? The time of someone I love? Is it a warning I can react to? If so, Why does it feel so utterly threatening? However, so far I have been paralyzed each time. At this point, I keep nearly dozing off while I write this, but I wanted an account out there in case one of these times it kills me. My sister developed sleep paralysis in the 1st grade, an unusual age to be having such menacingly realistic dreams caused by stress or outside forces, something none of us could understand. It got to the point where she would stay up nights on end, sleeping after an unfocused day of school in the light of the living room, only to be up another night without rest. Frankly, we were worried about Amy and didn't know what to do. A parent's worst nightmare, their child consumed by a sickness they couldn't understand. The doctors always said the same thing: a nightlight, a teddy bear, something generally comforting to aid her in sleep. But she was 7, not some 4-year-old who couldn't for the life of them understand what was going on. She knew the dreams always started and ended the same, and that she couldn't find comfort in much that would lessen the terror caused by such. She said it was always the same thing: a lady who stood over her beside her bed, hair too long and straggly, smile too wide, eyes too large, and she would whisper that she was going to steal Amy's body. My sister would shake and scream until she woke herself. She said she knew that one day the woman would succeed. We just saw them as all too realistic dreams. One night my sister woke from a particularly horrible nightmare of sleep paralysis, and she wandered into my room where she tugged on my shirt to wake me. Seeing her in the pitch dark of the room was a bit unnerving, seeing as she was wide awake, and it was the middle of the night, and I was confused why she hadn't crawled into bed with Mom and Dad. I'm sick of waking them up at night. "Tony, would you come sleep with me in my bed?" I was a little unsure, being a teenager, and wondering if this was weird or not, but she was my sister, and I sucked it up. She smiled and said, "You're my older brother, so you protect me. They keep trying to tell me to keep things that give me comfort in my room." I slept there for a couple of nights before her constant thrashing around and waking in bed had been enough, and then I started a routine of reading her stories until she fell asleep, crawling out of her bed and sleeping on the floor. My parents would sometimes walk in to check on us and thought it was the sweetest thing that their teenage son was sleeping on the floor watching over his sister. Meanwhile, I woke up with the feeling of a broken back every single morning. Sigh. Ami woke up thrashing one night, her eyes wide open, but every other thing about her told me that she was sleeping. I tried to get things under control, but as I stood to my feet and came near her bed, she started waving her arms around as if controlled by some otherworldly thing and yelled, "Don't! Don't!" I knew that she was struggling with whatever was haunting her dreams, and so I met her by the side of the bed and woke the sleeper. Something you're never ever supposed to do. She woke up in an instant with tears streaming down her face, and she fucking pushed me. And I mean with adrenaline-induced, inhuman strength for the little girl that was my sister. She was a menace. Then she snapped out of it, and I stared at her from my fallen position on the floor. "I don't know what happened," she cried. "I'm so sorry. Don't leave me here in my room. Please don't be mad." And well, I was there the next night, clear as day. I resumed to my spot on the floor after she was peacefully snoring in her bed. This time it was only after about 20 minutes of her sleeping that she woke up restlessly, for lack of a better term, woke, and started in on the screaming. My sister was absolutely terrified. Her blanket flew off the bed and covered me on the floor, and I crawled out from under, struggling to regain balance as I stood. Standing at the end of the bed, my sister stared at me with wide eyes and screaming, "Come!" So I listened to her and came, and when I did, she knocked me to the floor and woke up, and the entire fiasco had repeated itself just as the night prior. By this point, I was kind of scared by these night terrors. Something as simple as sleep paralysis, giving my sister this strength like something was inside her, controlling her. Giving her this strength to harm her brother, the person she said she thought could save her from this. The third night in a row, the blanket hit, and I tried a new approach. Her eyes burst open, and she was screaming, attempting to swat at something imaginary in front of her. I crawled out from under, sneaking a peek at the bed, Her eyes pointed to the left of her bed where they always were, searching for me or something. I steadily walked to the other side, but before I even got there, her head snapped in my direction and she screamed, "Closer." I walked closer, and as we met eyes and I was about to wake her from her slumber, her sweaty grip held onto my shirt and I trembled in front of her. "I'm awake." She threw me to the floor. I scurried backward on my legs, and my sister bolted from the bed with adrenaline pumping her to the exit of the room. She grabbed my hand on the way out and slammed the bedroom door behind us. "What the fuck?" I yelled at my sister, our parents now waking from their slumbers and crawling out of bed. I felt instantly bad that I had cursed in her face, but she was scaring the crap out of me, and I was utterly confused at what just happened. "I woke up in the middle of this dream," she said. "I've been warning you for a couple of nights. Don't come closer." "What?" I asked, shaking my head. I pieced together the things my sister had been saying to me over the past few nights. How she had thrown me to the floor. I told her about the crazy things she had been doing without even knowing it. "Well, this time I woke up," she started, tears pouring down her face, voice turning to a whisper as our parents came into the hallway. "The lady that stands over my bed tried to grab a hold of you. I saw her trying to climb into your mouth when it was hanging open. Don't come closer." The pushing. My sister had been trying to save my life from whatever the hell lived in that bedroom. The distinct feeling of something in my mouth came to light, and I reached a finger behind one of my front teeth, only to pull out a fingernail. I was in high school, about 5 years ago, when I had the experience, and it seriously altered my sleeping habits, and really opened my eyes to the world of sleep paralysis and lucid dreaming, but not until I got over the fear. It happened on a very regular weeknight. Nothing interesting or out of the ordinary happened until I closed my eyes. I awoke in the middle of the night to the sound of my closet door opening and a very unsettling wave of chills across my body. The first thought that went through my head was obviously disbelief, an instant, desperate rationalization. I hadn't opened my eyes at this point and remained perfectly still. I was ready to believe that I dreamt the ridiculously cliché noise, and just as I was about to drift back to sleep, I felt it. My philosophy class at the time was teaching a lesson about religion and how it dampers or humanizes a truly religious or supernatural experience. So here's where the really freaky shit happened. I felt like I had been thrown in the ocean. My entire nervous system was being stimulated in so many different ways. I had a heart-palpitating rush of adrenaline, and I felt like I was on fire and frozen at the same time. It was a feeling so hard to explain or understand, but I'm never going to forget it. I was still lying in the same position on my side, and my eyes were still closed. The neurological hurricane I was experiencing started to die down to something similar to the sensation of being underwater and the feeling of somebody watching me. Then it got into bed with me. I still couldn't open my eyes. I was fucking terrified. I was lying there trying to deny the horrible truth. I could feel the embodiment of something lying down in my bed, face to face with me. Thoughts were racing through my head. I was seriously considering just keeping my eyes closed for the rest of my life if I had to. Then it spoke. "Hey," it said so fucking close to my face, I could feel its breath. My eyes regrettably opened, and there it was. No face, no distinguishable features at all. Just this colorless, fuzzy entity. It looked like it was made of TV static, and I just stared at it. What else could I do? Fear took over. I couldn't move, breathe, scream, blink, or even think. I don't entirely remember what happened next. That's one of the most unsettling things to me about the whole experience. There's fragments of me stumbling out of my room and then staring out my backyard sliding door window for a while, which was steps from my open bedroom door. Don't remember how long I did this or why, but eventually I came to my fucking senses and sprinted upstairs to the other end of the house, closing every door and turning on every light along the way. I lived with my mom, but she was staying at her girlfriend's house that night. The first thing I did was try to contact my mom, but it was around 3 in the morning and she didn't answer her cell phone. I didn't dare move from the couch I was sitting on. I sat there and tried to make sense of the whole thing. I couldn't figure out if it was a dream or if I was still dreaming or what the fuck. I consider myself a very mentally sound person, but that night I was seriously unhinged. I spent the next 4 hours before I had to go to school, trying to regain my sanity and recuperate, all the while expecting a full-on paranormal activity showdown ending in my death. But it didn't happen. I slowly managed to reassure myself it must have been a dream, and I probably had too much sugar and played too much Halo the night before. All the things your parents say. I even managed to go back into my room and get a change of clothes and even shower and go to school. I didn't sleep in my room for about a week, and after that I had the light on for months. Sleeping wasn't the same for me. Every time I would try to fall asleep, I would clench my fists and hear myself screaming and fighting and either violently jerk awake or fall into the most fucked up semi-lucid dreams. I think my diagnosis of the whole thing, or my way of humanizing it, is it had to be some sleepwalking/dreaming episode. I think I must have got up in the middle of the night for whatever reason, the whole time being semi-aware, opened my closet door, the noise, and then made my way over to the sliding glass door, the reflection being the thing I saw. Either way, I still have episodes of sleep paralysis if I fall asleep in a strange place, a friend's house, or whatever. And I'm never gonna forget that feeling. It's been about 5 years, and every time I get the chills from a sweet song or a workout or even just being cold, the whole story just steps out of the back of my mind as a little reminder of the creepiest thing that has ever happened in my life.